right, welcome everyone. JR Dukes at your service. Appreciate you joining me today. We are standing by right now for a White House press conference. Should begin any second. If you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself in the comments and say hello. Let us know where you are from. We are going to wait momentarily for the conference to begin, but I do have a few things to chat about as we are waiting. So you are watching live, and I will carry the entire White House press conference in its entirety. So just again, making sure everyone is ready to go. Hello to everyone on the X platform. Hello to the individuals filing in on X. I always want to welcome all my free-minded friends to the YouTube, X, and Twitch conference we're having today. All right, Bear, appreciate you being here today. Thanks again. And as I just said, we are currently waiting and monitoring for the White House press conference to begin. And of course, this is with Karine Jean-Pierre, if I'm saying her name right. I don't think that her sidekick is supposed to be with her today. Obviously, if you've been watching the news in the last 24 hours, you would all know, wow, man, this press conference has been like electric. The one from yesterday, I mean, you talk about being testy and you talk about a little bit of fireworks. Sometimes these pressers are a little bit of a snoozer. You get a little nuggets here and there, but you have to admit yesterday's press conference has definitely interested me and piqued my interest. And of course, with the situation with President Joe Biden going on, we have to keep our finger on the pulse of exactly what's going on. The irony here is the Democratic National Convention is scheduled to begin in Chicago. And coincidentally enough, back in 1968, they also had their convention in Chicago. And those of us that are old enough to remember it, you probably remember it. I'm not quite old enough to have been there, but I have definitely studied it and looked at many videos of that particular, let's just call it a situation back in 1968. It was lively. I mean, you had rioting in the streets, police interacting with spectators. It was, there was injuries. There was people that got hurt in the course of that. And I believe it was actually what they call an open convention. And you see what happened with the Democrats in that particular election. What happened, if for those of you who don't know, is you had Lyndon Johnson, LBJ. He decided not to run for re-election because his poll numbers were dropping. The Vietnam War was extremely unpopular, obviously. And if you see me looking around, I'm just monitoring all the feeds I have. I do have a direct feed into the White House, and we'll be carrying it here very soon, as soon as it begins. At any rate, you had LBJ that stepped aside for the good of the country. He knew his poll numbers were in the tank. There was a coalition of politicians that came over to the White House and said, Mr. President, for the good of the country, for the good of our party, you need to resign. Additionally, it's important to note that LBJ, like President Biden, had some very serious health issues at that time. Research I've done has shown that LBJ, among other health issues he was experiencing, had some serious heart issues. And, let's be honest about it, it's a very stressful job, a very serious job. And I obviously want Donald Trump to assume the presidency this time around, but we have to be mindful. Even if the Democrat was to win, I want to have a Democrat in the office that can do the job. I want to have a Democrat that is functioning with all cylinders, that basically gives some type of credibility to our threats, our armed forces. When we say something, we do it. We don't want to have a president that is not in complete control of his faculties. I don't know about you, that just scares the bejesus out of me. I am going to go ahead and go out on a limb right here. I can pretty well tell you definitively that in all likelihood, you would not have the problems you have in Israel going on right now had there been a strong president in the White House. And unequivocally, the situation in Ukraine would have never happened. I think what you had is President Putin and others who've seen our disastrous withdrawal out of Afghanistan and how weak and feckless we all looked as a result of that. And I mean, there's other things we can talk about, but clearly, what a terrible policy that the United States has undertaken, not just domestically, but on the world stage. And it has made us look extremely weak. And if you look back through history, whenever we have had a weak leader in the White House, that is when we have had turmoil around the world. And I think it's really just that simple. So I want to have somebody in the White House that gives me confidence that we're okay, that someone is in charge of the armed forces. Imagine this. Obviously, we have talked about it on this program for a very long time. We all know President Joe Biden is suffering from some type of mental deficiency. I think that's very clear. The Wall Street Journal just came out with an article today, and the short version is they are talking to insiders who are now openly and very happy to talk to reporters that are essentially saying what's been going on for the last few years with Joe Biden has been staged. And we all know this. We've seen it with our own eyes. There's been this careful orchestration about anything and everything that Joe Biden does. And again, we know it. We've seen pictures come out in recent days where it has a picture of the podium, and at the top it says, "Walk to the podium." Really? For a president of the United States? Now, don't get me wrong. Some type of preparation is always appropriate, and I think it is a good thing. I mean, really. When we, if someone was preparing me to give a big speech, I would appreciate notes. I would appreciate knowing what I should do, essentially what I should steer away from, this type of stuff. But clearly, Joe Biden is at a different level, and either he is not aware of just how deficient he is, or the people in his bubble are lying to him. I think that's very clear, and I think that's what the Wall Street Journal has clearly shown. I also want to make one other comment that has just recently came out and been reported since yesterday, and that is that a neurologist, which of course is a specialist that will help you if you have a disease involving the nervous system or something to do with the brain, like we suspect the president has. There has been a neurologist coming to the White House, a verified prominent neurologist coming to the White House and consulting with, and we know this much for a fact, with at least the president's doctor, and meeting in the room, my understanding is right below the president's residence. And that is only used for the president and his immediate family. So think of this. Why would a neurologist visit the White House not once, but I believe the last 8 or 9 months on a 30-day repetitive cycle? I enjoy fairly decent health, but as we get older, we all generally have issues. We have things that go wrong with our body. I mean, if we live long enough, all of us are going to die as a result of some type of disease process. There's no such thing as dying of old age. We all die unless you are killed or jump off a mountain cliff somewhere. We all die of a disease process of some sort at some point in our lives. So I just want to state the obvious there, that when you have a neurologist come into the office on a 30-day cycle, it's kind of like my visits to my neurologist. I see my neurologist not every 30 days, but at least every 6 months. I guess it depends on the severity of whatever the problem is or whatever your disease is. And it's kind of hard to argue that the president is not a very important person. Therefore, the necessity for having visits every 30 days. And again, in my mind, if you have a neurologist coming to you to visit you at your home, as the president does every 30 days, clearly there is some type of problem, and he's being treated for it. And we have already had this press secretary lie to us, this Karine Jean-Pierre, however you say her name. She's been lying to us. At first she said, the president has not seen a doctor since this debate debacle. It's been just over a week now, right? Well, yesterday she said something to the effect of that he did have a verbal consultation. Really? A verbal consultation? Are you kidding me? That is a doctor visit. You know it's a doctor visit. I know it's a doctor visit. I guess the White House doesn't know it's a doctor visit. And this was the beginning of all of these fireworks yesterday at this presser. So again, I just find it interesting, and it's clear that the White House is lying to us. The president is lying to us. Even in the interview yesterday where he called into Morning Joe, there's a part of the recording where essentially the White House is saying that, no, the president was not reading from a script or anything like that. But clearly he had notes of some sort. You could hear the papers rustling on his desk at some point during the recording. Odd, right? And it's not getting any better. So, all right, let me turn to a couple of comments here. Sapphire, my friend, thanks for joining us today, as always. And Bear, appreciate you being here. My friend Zach, it's always good to have you, Zach. Zach, by the way, thank you for the super chat yesterday. I think I said that yesterday, but it was at the tail end of our live stream. So I just want to say it again. I appreciate you and each and every one of my followers out there who frankly support my channel. I can tell you definitively I don't do this for the money. There's not much of that comes in. However, it does help pay for some of the live streaming services, this type of stuff, and I do appreciate it. So that's the bottom line. And of course, Sapphire says hello. All right. And Zach, but we already have a POTUS like that. Yep, I agree. I agree. And, you know, the alternative here, by the way, folks, is President Kamala Harris. Can you believe that? For those of you just now joining us, we are waiting for a live White House press conference directly from the White House with Jean-Pierre, a.k.a. the liar, the press liar. We all know exactly what that's all about, right? All right, Sapphire, report came out yesterday that Jill and Hunter are running. But yeah, I've heard that too. I mean, on some level, I get that your family is someone you can lean on and that can help you and that you can effectively trust to do what needs to be done. But in this case, in my opinion, they are definitely not steering the president in the right direction. And I have an interesting thing I want to tell you in 1 second along that line. The White House neurologist must have unique obligations. I would think so. Yeah. And yeah, if you notice yesterday during the press conference, this sweet press secretary, we'll just go with it, they had Jean-Pierre, she sat right there, and when she got caught in her lies, she becomes aggressive and tries to change the subject. Oh, you're insulting me, you're becoming aggressive to me, you're doing something that's inappropriate and I don't appreciate it. And you know, she started going down that tangent. You know, to be honest with you, I thought she was going to start talking about that we're picking on her because she's black or she's a woman or some kind of nonsense like that. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. All right, Mrs. in New York, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate having you in the chat. Oh, I appreciate the chat and I appreciate the tip. I definitely appreciate you, Zach. Make no mistake about it. All right, Cindy, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate having you in the chat. Hello again to everybody on the X platform. I have always got a ton of people on the X platform. I appreciate you all being here. If you ever want to help out and support the channel, kick over to YouTube real quick and make sure you subscribe at JR Dukes. Or follow the link that should be in the description somewhere below on the X platform. And of course, Twitch. My few friends on there, welcome. Good to have you. And right now we have about 12 folks plus on the YouTube platform. Great to have you all on here. Okay, now let me make a quick point as we're, again, folks, we are waiting live for this White House press secretary to give a briefing. Don't fear, she's always late. Now, yesterday was a little bit of an extreme tardiness. They actually were so late that they went ahead and announced that the presser was for 2 o'clock versus the original 1:30 time frame. Having said that, this one here was advertised at 1 o'clock, which probably means it's going to start in the next 10 minutes or so, maybe. Again, we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. But I want to make a quick point. Those of you who regularly follow my channel and tune in and listen to what I have to say, I have talked about many times how one of my favorite individuals in history that is a non-religious figure that I really appreciate is George Washington, one of our founding fathers, the man that's on the $1 bill. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know this. Zach, you're the bomb, dude. Another super chat from Zach. Zach, thanks again. Let me finish my train of thought here and we'll talk some more. So I want you to understand, I love George Washington. I always have appreciated George Washington. I just think he is he's one of our founding fathers. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude. All of our founding fathers, these were very wealthy men that could have just kind of laid back and just kind of coasted through their lives and enjoyed their wealth and enjoyed whatever assets they had in this world. And they basically didn't have to take these type of risks, but they decided to take these type of risks in spite of the consequences, which could have easily been death, because according to the British Empire, they would have been treasonous individuals that would have essentially been put to death. I mean, if it went the other way, had they been caught. But here's my point that I want to drill down on. Something George Washington, in my opinion, does not get enough credit for. And I think this is very important. I don't ever hear anybody talking about this. George Washington, to my knowledge, and if you know different, put it in the comments, please, was the first person in history to be at the pinnacle of power He was the most powerful person in the country at that time. He was the president. There are a lot of historians that say he could have easily manipulated everything and turned himself into a de facto king. But he was the first person in history that did something amazing. He was at the pinnacle of power, and he willingly, without any bloodshed, without anyone losing their life, set the example that we follow to this day, 249, 200, ever how many years it's been, a long time. And he was the first person to be at pinnacle of power and walk away from it, and bloodlessly giving the helm to another person after him, who, of course, I believe was John Adams, was our second president of the United States. And I just don't think he gets enough credit for that. I think that is something that we all need to think about and appreciate. What a great man that he would do something like that. Folks, again, we are standing by, if you just tuned in, for the White House press briefing, and I am monitoring it on several channels. I want to check one more thing. Yeah, we have 2 or 3 feeds, just in case we have any issues. We can go directly to it. All right, quickly, Zach, again, thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. You are always tipping, not just on live streams, but he's always tipping on some of my regular videos, too. So I do appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks again to Zach. Zach says, neurologist must be trying to calm Karine's, how do you say her name? Karine, it's something like caring, ain't it? Karine's nerves before she can come out. Yeah, I'm sure that's pretty funny, actually. Or she needs to take some of them drugs Joe Biden is obviously taking. I mean, let's be honest about it. He has to be taking something. I don't really think there's any arguing with that. I have said many times, and I'll restate the obvious again, he has to be on what we call nootropics, or just other medications that will improve your performance. One of the medications that I talk about often is Provigil. I believe the generic name is Monvigil. Have y'all seen the movie Limitless? It used to be real popular years ago, and I personally have always liked that movie. But that drug in the movie Limitless, NZT, I believe is what they called it in the movie, that was based on Provigil. Now, I will tell you, Provigil does not work like NZT does, but I think it is fair to say that depending on the individual, it definitely enhances cognitive ability. It is technically for people with narcolepsy that has trouble going to staying awake. They just may fall asleep whenever. I will go ahead and admit, for in full disclosure, I take Provigil myself occasionally. It helps me wake up. It helps me stay awake. Some of the conditions I have is, oftentimes I get fatigued, this type of thing. I mean, again, it just happens to us all in life. And I'm definitely not one to talk about aches and pains. That's just the way it is. But these medications really work. And the only way I can describe Provigil to you, it's not like what we would call a high or an intoxication like with alcohol. It just wakes you up. Now, some people really have some serious reaction to it in a positive manner, in the sense it gives them energy. I have a friend that was taking it, and she had issues with fatigue and this type of thing, and she took it, and man, she was cleaning house all day and just happy to be doing it. So, again, it works for a lot of people. I have not heard of any bad effects from the medication that I know of. Research that I've done before I started taking the medication myself said that it is possible to cause some rare condition. It's like 1 in a million, and I guess some people die, but all medications have some type of health issue or effect. But the thing I like about Provigil, it is not like a normal stimulant to the point to where it gives you this shaky feeling or this nervous feeling. Again, it just wakes you up. And Cindy, you're right. I don't want to say it's like speed. I would say Joe Biden would call it cocaine. And of course, I'm making a joke there with that cocaine found in the White House. But in all seriousness, you are right about this. And it does make you awake. It can give you energy. But the difference in that and say taking like Ritalin or something, Ritalin, when I've taken Ritalin in the past, it can give you a little bit of nervousness or a little bit of jitteriness. That's one thing I don't like about energy drinks, this type of thing. And you're right. If you're thinking about it, you can say, okay, it works kind of like speed, but without the jitteriness, gives you a little bit of energy. Again, I love it. There is a very popular YouTube clip for those of y'all who are interested. You can type in Provigil 2020 news report. I believe now it's probably about 9 years old plus, and it's a great video. pertaining to Provigil, and talks about a guy, I believe his name is Dave Aspie or something to that effect, and he had some real positive effects. Again, it did not affect me like that, but it definitely helped as far as waking up, energy, this type of thing. And the only thing I'll tell you about the medication, don't take it too close to bedtime, because for some people it can affect your ability to sleep. But enough about stimulants. What I want to get across is clearly President Biden has been taking something. I think that's clear. If you go back and you look at the speech during the State of the Union back in January, all the way up to that speech, everybody was talking about his performance. Zach says Adderall can cause heart attacks, especially in the elderly. Absolutely, yeah. I know a lot of the folks that join me here are older people. The truth is, I get a whole range of people that join me here, which I definitely appreciate. Make no mistake about it. But I want to caution everybody, especially when I am talking about medications. I'm not implying or indicating that anyone should take anything. I'm just telling you what might be going on with President Joe Biden, what medications can be used to help hide symptoms of fatigue, being lethargic, not being able to function, needing energy. There are many medications that can do that. And there's a class of stimulants and what we would call probably supplements called nootropics that also are designed to help you cognitively and with energy levels, this type of stuff. So I'm just telling you what my personal experience would be. If you're interested in something I just said, make sure that you contact your doctor before you take any medication. So that's basically what I want to say here. Sydney says she's having a pep rally. Yeah, I'm sure. Alrighty. Adderall can cause heart attack. Okay, we just went over that. Good. We're all caught up on that. Again, if you're just joining me, we are waiting for the White House Live. We're going to wait for Jean-Pierre to give us another one of these exciting recaps on what's going on. All right, we talked about George Washington, and I hope that was a good illustration of just how important it can be to just kind of respect what a great process we have, what a great country we have. And that all started with the first example of George Washington. And it's relevant today because you have Joe Biden and his cronies. They are attacking Donald Trump ruthlessly, continuously. I heard him, I think it was yesterday, the day before. Oh, Donald Trump is in it for himself. He only cares about himself. He loves himself. He doesn't care anything about our country. He would never put our country first. It's always his needs. At least that's the mantra they keep speaking. And in reality, we can see how President Biden feels about the country. Instead of putting the good of the country ahead of his own desires, his wife putting the good of the country ahead of his own desires or her desires, it's clear, at least to me, that he can call out Trump for what he sees as Trump's problems and imperfections. But in all reality, just to call it like I see it, it's Joe Biden that has to know he has some type of decline going on, and yet he won't step aside and do what's right. It's just funny how these Democrats, I'll just call them woke Democrats. The Indians would say they speak with a forked tongue, and I think that is exactly correct. Sydney says, I love how Democrats are now coming back to the fold. Yeah, we've talked about it on this channel, Cindy, and that is that I don't really think Joe Biden's going to go anywhere unless Joe Biden tells himself, I'm going to go ahead and resign. That's the only way, because despite what the talking heads say, they cannot replace him. They just simply cannot do it. The what do they call them at the convention? The delegates that they put in those positions are what you call very faithful individuals. The people that run the campaign, like Joe Biden, I can assure you that they make sure these people are fiercely loyal. It would not change their vote. My understanding of the Democratic rules say something to the effect of they need to support their candidate and use their good conscience or something like that. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, but for all practical purposes, if Joe Biden wants this nomination, he's going to go forward with the nomination. There's also some talk that has to do with money. If Joe Biden was to drop out at this point, even if Kamala Harris was to take the realm, there could be potential issues with as much as $100 million of the money they have already acquired. Although there's mixed opinions on this subject, clearly Kamala Harris would probably have access to most of that money, but there is some ambiguity pertaining to whether or not Harris would have the same right to the money as Biden has, unless they go through at least the nomination process pertaining to that money. Otherwise, there's all kinds of stuff that they may have to do, like give the money to a super PAC. But if they give it to a super PAC, something about these rules. Remember, again, we talked about in this program, these rules pertaining to campaign contributions, what they tried to beat Donald Trump over the head with, is very complicated and convoluted, and it varies sometimes from state to state. And pertaining to the federal rules, they are also very complicated, and there's a lot of gray area there. That's probably the best way that I can explain it. I know they don't want to refund the money to everyone and hope that they redonate it to a new ticket. I don't think that's going to happen. I know once you give that money, they surely are not going to give you that money back. I think that's pretty clear. But they have a problem, and as far as I'm concerned, I worry about the country because, as I said earlier, even if a Democrat, God forbid, was to win and become the next president of the United States, I want it to be a strong, focused candidate with the ability to do the job at all hours of the night. I think that just keeps you and me and our families safer and keeps our country in a much better and stronger position. I think that's self-evident. That makes sense, and I think that's very clear. But I don't see Joe Biden doing that. He's gonna ride this all the way. If he was to win, I think you're going to see the 25th Amendment used for the first time ever if he doesn't resign on his own. So the conclusion, my friends, is, as I've been saying, it's going to be Joe Biden, Donald Trump all the way, unfortunately. A fractured party is like a fractured house. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln that said, a house divided cannot stand, period. It's going to collapse, which kind of makes sense. If you're divided against yourself, it's not going to work. And if you remember back to 1968, that's exactly what happened again with the Democrats. They were divided. It was a very hostile convention. It was a contentious convention, and hey, it is what it is, and it just looks really good for Donald Trump at this point. My opinion, this election is Donald Trump's to lose at this point, which I think is a prayer answered by for many of us. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But that's my opinion as of right now. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, we are waiting live. We have a live feed. We have several feeds actually into the White House, where the White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is going to give one of her dazzling, razzling responses to the press. Personally, I'm hoping there's a little bit of fireworks like there was yesterday, but we'll see what their strategy is for today. All right, Bear. Joe Biden isn't going anywhere, and they will not do the 25th on him because it will expose them. Yeah, that may be the case, but 4 years, basically 5 years from now, that's a long time. I think they may let him finish out till January, but we'll see how that goes. Zach, it isn't rational for dementia President of the United States to run on past performance. I agree completely. Bear, they can't give the money back. It was money laundering. Yeah, probably. All right. And my friend Sapphire, Mark Halpern, said yesterday, only Camilla can get any of that money because she's already. I would agree that that's probably my interpretation on that too, because the bank accounts, everything is listed as the Joe Biden Harris administration. I would think she has equal rights to that money. Again, I'm not an expert on that particular subject. We'll just have to see how it works out. And my friend, American Nana, thank you for joining us today. It's always good to have you in the house, American Nana. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's go ahead. I made a couple notes from yesterday that I wanted to mention. We talked, and they were talking in the presser yesterday about NATO and some of the issues that I think we need to all be concerned about. That situation right now with Israel and Hamas, and to the north of them, you have Hezbollah that's getting ready to go to war with them, which, of course, are all backed by Iran. I mean, this is all a powder keg waiting to explode. And you have to remember, in relation to Russia, Russia's not going to lose, friends. They technically have the largest nuclear, they are the largest nuclear power, by numbers at least, in the world when it comes to nuclear arms, even greater than the United States. Now, when you start talking 6,000 or 7,000 nuclear warheads, it really doesn't matter. That's enough to literally destroy the world many times over, which of course gives me a lot of reason to think we need to be very careful, and we need to make sure this is handled properly and professionally. And it always tickles me when I hear the Democrats, especially, oh, Donald Trump is a terrible person. He talks to people in North Korea. He talks to Putin. Folks, you have to talk to your enemies. You have to communicate with them. You have to sit down with them. And it's kind of like what Jesus did. He would sit down and break bread with people. He would talk to people, even people that were not, let's just say, good people. They were people that generally you didn't associate with, especially back in that day. And of course, I'm talking about Jesus at the well, talking to the woman there. Let's just say she had many problems. You have to sit down with others and talk with them in the hope of reaching compromise or reaching something that we all can live under. Now, I am definitely not appealing to appeasement. We know that doesn't work. We know that all the way back from Adolf Hitler, that appeasement does not work, period. But at the same time, we can't necessarily compare Russia to Hitler. And if it was a Hitler, we really have some serious problems. As Americans, and listen, I have to say on the front end, y'all that know me know I bleed red, white, and blue. I love America. I am an American patriot. Having said that, we have to understand not every country is like the United States or could be like the United States. Russia is a huge country. It's the largest country on the face of the earth. And they are basically a collection of other countries in a way, lands that Russia conquered throughout history. And they kind of live semi-autonomous types of governments under the Kremlin in those areas. And my point is, democracy, unfortunately, doesn't work everywhere. Sometimes, despite what they tell you on the news and in history class, it takes a strong man, a strong woman, I guess, to be there to hold it together. I mean, it's really just that simple. As of today, it takes Russia 1.1 to 1.2 million soldiers just to repel their borders. That's how huge Russia is. It is a huge country. We really don't want to make an enemy of them. If it has to be that way, so be it. But we don't want to make an enemy of them. They have already taken territory in Ukraine, and I think anybody thinks they're going to give that up or it's going to be taken from them is living a lie. They're lying to themselves. They're not being honest intellectually with what the reality is on the ground. It's really just that simple. Now, let's go ahead and take a quick peek at this map while we're waiting on this presser to begin. I want to pull this one map up. I have this map that, and again, I am monitoring the channels right now. I just got a quick point I want to make out, or that I want to make pertaining to this situation that's going over in Russia. Okay, so here is a map. Let's take a look at this together. Here is a map of the Europe, Asia area. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, we can all see Ukraine right here, right? Right in the center. I don't know if you can see my mouse over there, but at any rate, it's right in the middle of your screen. And then you have Russia right next door, a huge, massive country. And then, of course, the European Union is to the left-hand side of the screen as you're facing the screen. Look how large Ukraine is. It's not really well reflected on this map. Ukraine is larger than the state of Texas, and I used to live in Texas back in the day. And for y'all that don't know, Texas is huge. If you flipped it on one end, it would be in the Pacific Ocean. If you flipped it on the other end, it'd be all the way in the Atlantic Ocean, period. I mean, it is just an enormous piece of land. One time, I was living in Phoenix, and I drove all the way across from Phoenix, heading to Houston. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really, this is really great. This is exciting. I'm making good time. I had younger kids back in that time frame, and I had to pedal to the metal. I believe I was going to visit family at that particular time. As you see, we are waiting on the White House there, so we do have a live feed, and we're just going to continue to wait. So back to my story. I'm driving to Houston, and man, we were kicking all day. I mean, I had the pedal down. We were flying right across. Was that Interstate 10? We were booking it straight to Houston. I was happy. We're out of Arizona, went through New Mexico, passed through El Paso, and I mean, I was pushing it hard all day long, right? Well, evening time was rolling around. I thought, man, I have to be getting closer. And I'm telling you, it wasn't too further up the road from that. When I was having those thoughts, I saw a sign that said Houston, 500 miles. And it was like, oh my goodness, that is, I mean, Texas is one huge place. So I'm only telling you that because I want to kind of illustrate just how big Ukraine is. It's a huge place. So think of it from the Russians' perspective. They have been warning us for a long time, all the way back, well, really to the Reagan administration, definitely in the Clinton administration, stop the expansion of NATO. I mean, NATO was formed as something to deter Russia from invading. I mean, it's really just that simple. Well, if it was the state of Texas that somehow broke off, and by the way, for y'all that don't know, when I was in seventh grade, I lived in the state of Texas, and that meant I got to learn a lot about the great state of Texas. And Texas is the only state in the Union that has flown under 5 different flags. At one time, Texas was its own independent country. Well, imagine, and one last point, Texas, in its constitution, has a right to withdraw by popular vote from the Union if it chooses to do so. It's the only state in the Union that has that option, to my knowledge. Well, I don't think the federal government would ever allow that to happen, even with the vote. But I digress. Imagine Ukraine. Ukraine was part of Russia, similar to the way Texas is part of the United States. As a matter of fact, the 1980s, who was the leader? That Gorbachev, the guy that kind of worked everything out with Ronald Reagan. It was his mother, I believe, was from Ukraine. His father was Russian, or reversed, whatever it was. He had definitely Ukrainian and Russian in his family, just the same way you might have someone from Texas and from another state in your family. Well, imagine if Texas was somehow to be a free country, and then 30 years later, they decided they wanted to be closer to the Kremlin, closer to the Warsaw Pact, which, of course, was the counter to NATO. It's no longer in existence, but that was their answer to the NATO threat a long time ago. But just follow my illustration. Imagine that they decided that, Texas said, hey, we want to be closer to Moscow. This is who we want as our friends, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to join their war pact. Well, the United States would be exactly the same way, if not worse. There's no way in HELL that we would ever allow that to happen. And Exhibit 1 is the Cuban Missile Crisis. We would not allow Cuba right in our backyard. And by the way, again, if you don't know, Cuba used to be part of the United States a long time ago. And after we conquered Cuba, we ended up giving Cuba its independence. So without digressing, just think of it in reverse form like that. That's kind of what you have going on in Ukraine. You have people on one side saying, oh, the Ukrainian people need independence. They need the right of self-governance. They have a right to do what they want to do. And you know what? That sounds wonderful. Now, I can almost get a tear to pull up about it if I wanted to. But the reality is that that's not the real world. This is actually Russia. This is part of Russia. They have very close ties with Russia and have had that for a long time. I'm not an expert on the history of Ukraine, but I wanted to share this example with you so you can kind of understand what's going on there from a different perspective. Imagine, again, the United States invades Texas. We're not going to allow Texas to join some type of Warsaw Pact or some kind of Moscow, whatever. We're just not going to allow that to happen. And yet you have Russia feeding people in Texas all these weapons and tanks. I mean, it would be a very dicey and serious situation. And I just submit that for you to understand what is going on here. I think NATO is important. I think it's important to keep the peace. But when you hear these people talk about NATO expanding into Ukraine, this is not going to happen. And if it does happen, we could have a serious problem. And I think that's what former President Donald Trump is talking about when he continuously mentions we're on the brink of a possible World War III. I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't think that's just people talking. I don't think it's fear-mongering. I think that is true. Just add it up. What's going on in Israel with that powder keg, the situation Joe Biden's got us in with Ukraine, the weakness he's shown in Afghanistan. He walked away from a military base that, my understanding, it's something like 30 to 40 miles wide. huge swipes of airfields and all types of equipment, billions of dollars of investing that the United States did in that area. It gave us a unique backdoor to kind of keep oversight closely of China. And we walked away from that because this man, Joe Biden, despite the clear instructions and advice he was given from experts in the military not to do this, he decided to do this. I mean, it's kind of outrageous when you think about it. He just, no, I've said I was going to end it, and I'm going to end it. And that's what he did. And of course, they accuse former President Donald Trump of lying 28 times. That's the new phrase during the debate. And in reality, I could not find no outright lies that President Trump said. But what I could find is that President Biden said that under his watch, no American service men or women lost their lives in the line of duty. And that's just an insult. It's a complete lie. We all know there was 13 that was blown up at the airport as they were in a panic to get out of there, right? I'm curious what y'all think about this. Does that example make sense? Does that kind of illustrate the problem? I think it's always important, even if you don't agree with people, to at least try to see things through their eyes. I think it opens up the possibility of compromise and working out the problem, working out the situation. Again, if you're just joining us live, we are waiting for a White House press briefing. And of course, as we said, she's always late. This is very late, no doubt about it. She's at least 50 minutes late by my watch, but never fear. I am going to stay with you until we get this press conference started. I am monitoring 3 or 4 different places, so we're going to get it moving here. Okay, let's go back to the comments real quick. And let me see where we were last time. Here we go. American Anna again. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, Karine must have been waiting until you got here. That's exactly right. She's waiting. She's waiting for American Anna. I hope everybody did have a happy 4th of July. Definitely wish everybody that was off or able to take off. I hope you all had a great time. See, I survived the 4th. Neighbor. Oh, yeah. You know, I saw this real funny little picture skit, whatever, somewhere on one of the feeds or something, and they were complaining, as I've complained. The only bad thing about fireworks is people shoot them things off just about everywhere now, all the time, even weeks after the 4th of July. And someone put a picture of some guy shooting off a bunch of fireworks, and he was real upset about it in his neighborhood. And his comment was that one of the fireworks almost caused one of his Christmas decorations to catch on fire. So I thought that was kind of humorous. The guy still had his Christmas stuff up from all that time ago. So kind of cute. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's right. American Nana, you are in New Hampshire. Good to have you as always. Zach, appreciate your comments. See if I see any questions in the chat. American Nana working as a personal assistant to rich folks. That's always a good thing to be doing. Biden lied about everything. That's right, Cindy. I agree. Ian, Zach, Joey redefined in the line of duty. Yeah, probably. Or he just couldn't remember it. And this economy is very scary. My friend Sapphire says, you never exit a war zone through a commercial airfield. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Kind of a mess. The whole thing was a complete, absolute, disgraceful mess. I mean, I don't think I would disagree with anything you just said there, Sapphire. All right. A couple little notes. We have Donald Trump today giving a speech in Florida. I believe it's in what they call Doral, Florida. It's down in the Miami area. For those of you who do not know, I'm right outside the Metro Tampa area. They don't really call it Metro Tampa, the Tampa Bay region. So I'm in between Tampa and Orlando, kind of central Florida, but further down south in Miami, right outside Miami. Donald Trump is going to give a huge, what they say is a huge speech this evening. I actually thought about driving down there to go visit and attend. If you've never been to a Donald Trump rally, you have to do that. It is a lot of fun. Make no mistake about it. It's entertaining. There's a lot of energy in the crowd. His rallies are a big event, and like I said, the one that I was attending was a lot of fun. It was somewhere right outside Tampa at one of the public fields that they had one. I believe that was back in 2016 or 2020, whichever one I attended. It's a lot of fun. to attend a Trump rally. But the interesting thing on this particular rally is Senator Marco Rubio from the state of Florida is going to be attending. You are less than a week away from the Republican National Convention that is being held in, I believe it's in Wisconsin this year. And of course, as you probably already know, Senator Rubio is one of the people reported to be on the top of Donald Trump's VP list. Now, personally, I do not know, nor have I looked into it to see how they would get around the constitutional requirement that you cannot have the president and the vice president from the same state, because obviously Donald Trump has his home in Mar-a-Lago right here in Florida. And of course, Mark Rubio is a sitting senator. I believe he's the senior senator from the state of Florida. And that would be interesting. I'm not sure how that would work out, but I'm sure they have some way to make a plan to make that work out. I will say they had a similar situation all the way back when George W. Bush ran for president. Him and Dick Cheney, the vice president, were actually both Texans. And I'm going off memory here, but I believe that Dick Cheney changed his residency to his ranch in Wyoming, and it was really no big deal. But my point is this: wouldn't it be interesting tonight if you had Donald Trump come out and boom, Mark Rubio is my VP? That would be an interesting development if it was to happen. I don't know. You guys think that can happen? You think that's a possibility, or is that just, as they say, a bridge too far? And let's say Sapphire, and they're saying that his VP will be there. Yeah, I've heard the speculation about that too. The only thing is, though, is that generally Donald Trump, I mean, this guy is a professional in the TV realm. This guy is a guy that knows how to create a stir, create anticipation. I know that they are very reluctant, very resistant to having something happen to take the spotlight off of Joe Biden and the Democrats essentially shooting each other. You don't want to get in the middle of it when your enemy is self-destruction, right? Or self-destructing. So I guess we'll have to see how that works out. Zach, maybe Karine is disputing what she's supposed to say. That's a good point. I would say that when you don't let your press secretary know everything and know what's going on, and you send them out there kind of allowing them to be blindsided, it's not a good look. It's very unprofessional. I've heard some commentators saying that Karine did not know some of the answers or some of the things she was questioned about. I personally don't believe that. I think she's in the loop, and it's probably behooves them to keep her in the loop so she can prepare to answer whatever questions they may have. The way she was yesterday, real aggressive, kind of mean, trying to turn the table, I don't think that's going to work at all. I just flat don't think that's going to work. And we're still waiting. For those of y'all who are just tuning in, we are still waiting for the press conference from the White House. We're waiting for Karine Jean-Pierre to appear, smile at us all, and tell us some more lies. But at any rate, we're going to be on top of it, and we're going to stay with it. Hopefully, it will not be much longer. Admittedly, she's almost an hour late, which is not a complete surprise. She's always late, but we'll see how this works out. Let me finish up these comments here. Sapphire Rubio would simply have to move to another state. Yeah, but I mean, does he have to resign as a Florida senator? I think you have to live in the state to be a senator, but I have not checked further into that. I cannot imagine Marco Rubio resigning to become vice president, or at least attempt to become vice president. We'll have to see how that works out. Cindy says, Zach, they may have to pry her on the podium. Yeah, I think that's probably true. She has to be frustrated. I don't know about you guys. I would not want to be the person that has her job. What a terrible, terrible job to have. And the pressure, and everybody knows you're lying. Personally, you guys know that I'm always concerned about court, and I always like to study court issues and how to interact with police and just different things along them lines. And of course, with lawfare and how everybody now has decided they're going to throw their opponents in jail, I would just be concerned about doing something where essentially I'm part of a conspiracy to hide something the American people needs to know, such as the health of the president of the United States. I could see somehow, some way, they go after people like that is hiding a clear problem, a clear defect with the President of the United States. It would be interesting to see if that ever would develop. I personally hope they put a permanent stop to all this lawfare, not just at the top of the ticket, so to speak, but this deal of going after cronies and going after people that work for you. How are we expected to obtain, keep, retain, attract the best people, the best minds when we're in this situation now? Look at Rudy Giuliani. Look at what they've done with Steve Bannon. The other guy's name's escaping me. He's currently in prison right now for contempt of Congress. It's funny how these people are in jail for contempt of Congress, but you have the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, that was ordered to produce the actual tapes related to the Her. That's the guy's last name, the Her investigation, yet he refuses to do that. We'll have to see what develops out of that. I will tell you that one of the current representatives from, I believe it's Pinellas County, she's one good-looking woman too, by the way, that Anna Paluna, whatever, I forgot her full name. She's a pretty smart young lady, and she is definitely doing everything she can to go after. All right, let's see what we got here on the questions. Yeah. All righty. And Zach. Oh, I hope I am not still frozen, Zach. Sometimes you're going to get glitches like that, but hopefully I have thought out. And because Rubio is in Florida, DeSantis can name his replacement. Yeah, I think that might be an option. He might resign. I don't know. Would you guys resign on a maybe? I guess it looks pretty good for Donald Trump becoming the next president, but I'd have to think about that if I had to actually resign to actually run for a position. I'd have to think about that long and hard on there. Hopefully he doesn't have to resign to run for the vice president of the United States if he actually gets the nod to finish out his term, and DeSantis can even name that. Okay. And let's see, Cindy, maybe she quit. Yeah, that'd be hilarious. You will replace it. Am I still frozen? Someone put in the comments. It looks like on my feed, it looks like you can see me moving. I hope I'm not frozen anymore. All right, let's see. Zach, now we have to wait for Claudine and JR. Zach, I think it's only on your end, my friend. Try hitting refresh on your screen or something, because it looks like I'm good on all the other feeds. I got a separate computer I keep here just to keep track in case something does go wrong with the audio or the feed. I'm on top of it, and I'm not getting any notion like that. On my extra computer here, I'm moving and looking as handsome as always, but we'll see how that works out. All right, Zach, now we have to wait. Okay, we got that. And finally, Sapphire, he doesn't resign until after. I didn't think so. Yeah, I'm glad you knew that. I did not know if that was the actual case or not. All right, once again, folks that are joining us, we hopefully are just moments away from the promised White House press briefing by Secretary, I think her name is Karine Jean-Pierre. But we will see how that pans out. Welcome again to my friend on Twitch. All of y'all joining. We got 17 or so on X and 10 to 12 popping in and out on YouTube as of right now. I'm sure it will grow bigger once she actually gets over here. And again, I appreciate all the comments. Any questions, folks, do not hesitate to put it in the chat box below, and we will try to get an answer for whatever question that you may have. Did y'all see last night the interview that Sean Hannity got with former President Donald Trump? I thought it was a pretty good interview, and I personally think it is extremely smart the way Donald Trump has been laying uncharacteristically low and not trying to steal the news cycle or the spotlight. Again, when you got your enemies kind of shooting themselves or shooting at themselves, why not? And apparently they are still meeting, the Dems are still meeting, having a secret meeting amongst themselves, trying to figure out what to do about President Joe Biden. You know, you talk about between a rock and a hard place. What a terrible place to be. It's literally, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If they allow him to stay in, this is going to be the talk all the way up through Election Day. Clearly, there's some kind of issue or issues going on with President Biden. And then if he steps aside, what are they going to do? Put Kamala Harris in there? Oh my goodness, what a nightmare that would be. And folks, let's be honest about it. Nobody likes Kamala Harris. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. I don't really think she has a snowball's chance. And you know what? To get a nomination like that, at least that's my opinion. Just checking the feeds one more time. Okay, we are still standing by. Now, that's fine. I got other subjects I want to touch on and talk about, but the conversation that Hannity had with Trump last night was pretty good. I was thinking of a working title, by the way, when it comes to President Biden. One of the videos I'm working on. Tell me if y'all like this. It's called "Debate and Switch." Anybody get the meaning in that? And we'll type that in. Debate and switch. It's another irony when it comes to the president that these woke Democrats are always discussing how Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to democracy. I mean, they just come out and say that. That's what they always say. Yet you have the Democratic Party is in the process right now of trying to oust the will of the voters. Now, we shouldn't be surprised. The clear and present danger to democracy is clearly these Democrats. They're the ones that took off the name of Donald Trump off of the ballot. I mean, that could literally have led to the disintegration of our entire society. Our entire constitutional republic was at stake. You talk about a constitutional crisis. It doesn't get any worse than that, not allowing people to have a fair vote to choose who they want to be for their leaders. I mean, I just think that that is just as fundamental as it can be. So, Sapphire, I'm glad you like my little title there. Yeah, debate and switch. But you have the Democrats right now who are openly calling for the will of the people to be overthrown. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I want to see a president, whether it's Democrat or Republican or whoever, Republican or whomever, that can actually do the job and is up to the job. Even though I may not agree with their policies, practices, we have to have somebody able to do the job at the helm. So I get that. But at the same time, the Democrats are responsible for this. Make no mistake about it, folks. They've been lying to us this entire time. The press, the legacy media, in my opinion, has been complicit. And I believe many of them have been part of this cover-up that's been going on for a long time. The outcome of this has not even started. I can assure you of that. They eventually are going to drill all through this and figure out exactly what happened and why it happened and who was part of this conspiracy. This conspiracy, it reminds me of that movie from the 80s, The Weekend at Bernie's. This is kind of like the Weekend at Biden's is what this is. As a matter of fact, I have a thumbnail that I made that says exactly that on one of my prior videos. Well, I think it was a live stream. If you're interested in seeing it, you can check that out. But it really is. You have essentially a dead president, which is kind of a funny way to thinking about it. A dead president being slang for cash. You have a dead president that basically is walking around just a shadow of himself, unable to do the job, at least anything before 10 or anything after 4 o'clock in the evening. And of course, we're talking about Eastern Standard Time. Wow. Unbelievable. So it's the presidential campaign, the election at Biden's. Unbelievable. I appreciate the feedback on my title right there. We're going to take a look at a letter Joe Biden sent Congress, folks, as we are waiting for this press secretary, Jean-Pierre, to join us and to lie to us some more. But it's going to be interesting to see what she has to say and to dissect. Okay, Bear. Okay, she has one job to do and can't do the job. She can't be on time. Yeah, she's terrible. This is about the worst I've seen as far as delays. Normally she's 30 minutes-ish late. But, oh, yeah, it's important that I mention that to you because I always try to be very punctual and very on time. So if you see an alert that I have something planned for a particular time, you'll know me. You can almost set your watch by it. I normally appear live at the designated time. I was delayed yesterday and today, and you know the reason, because she was not even close to starting. But today I prepared some extra topics to talk about just in case this happened, and of course it did happen. But yeah, she cannot do her job. Thank you, Sapphire. Appreciate the feedback. And Zach, we're always glad to have you back. Zach is back. Love it. All right, moving on. Got my title all set up. We've hammered and talked about what's going on and this 1968 debate. I will say one thing. I think Biden coming out yesterday with guns ablaze, kind of like a double-barrel shotgun, I think that was actually probably a good idea if he wants to stay in the race. And I'm not talking about whether it's good for him to stay in the race as a president that is definitely not firing on all cylinders, to put it bluntly. but I'm glad that I mean, from a strategy perspective, it was really good what they did yesterday. If the goal was to legitimately keep President Biden in the race, and what they did is they sent a letter to Congress, basically saying, and we're going to take a look at it here in a second. Looks like we got time. We're going to take a look at the letter and basically daring people to say, hey, you want to challenge me? Come on out and challenge me. And of course, he did that call in interview with his favorite news station, the Morning Joe, Joe and Joe Biden, the Morning Joe folks over there at MSNBC, probably two of the one of the most corrupt news medias that I can possibly think of, right? And of course, he called in. I guess he did a good job, if you can do a good job in that type of thing. But that's exactly what happened. All right, let's take a quick peek at this letter. I think I've been wanting to talk about this letter. We have not been able to go around. Also, the White House did release a letter dated yesterday. This was after the presser from Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, and she essentially was, she's trying to make us aware of Biden's health from his doctor. Let's take a quick peek at that because I'm interested in seeing that myself. I have not had a ton of time seeing that. Okay, let me switch screens on us real quick. And remember, for y'all that are popping in and out, we are waiting on this press conference to begin. We are going to, let me stop sharing on this one. Let's take a look at this letter and y'all tell me what you think about this as we read it together. Now, all right, this is the letter that was dated yesterday. Let me blow it up a little bit so everybody can see it. I think everybody can see that pretty good. There we go. All right, we'll let it go at that. As you can see, this is the physician to the President of the United States to the White House, dated yesterday. And of course, it's to the press secretary, Jean-Pierre, assistant to the president and White House press secretary. And it's from President Biden's doctor, the physician to the president, Kevin O'Connor. His name and this other guy's name that's a neurologist. Well, I don't want to say which one's his personal physician. Yeah, okay, this guy, I just checked my notes, is the personal physician to the president. Another guy is the actual neurologist that's been coming by the White House. Remember, approximately the last 8 months, every 30-day cycle, clearly, in my opinion, indicating that the president has some type of issue or issues, to put it bluntly. Again, just making sure I'm keeping track of all the news stations and this press conference. Looks like the Dems are still in their meeting and they're split, according to many reports pertaining to whether Joe Biden should stay in the race. They really have a bad situation. It looks like you're going to have a House divided, which is great news, of course, if you're a Donald Trump supporter. All right, back to the letter. This is what the letter says. We'll hit the highlights on it. It's not too long of a letter. I think it's only a page or two. Yeah. All right, I wanted to share with you background on why Dr. Kevin Conrad visited the White House. Now, Conrad versus O'Connor, just so y'all are aware, this guy is the expert, the neurologist we were talking about. And the White House, to give a little more context to this, has been, at least since yesterday, saying they can't disclose stuff because of privacy. Now, I don't believe this, and I'm sure you don't believe this either, but let's take a peek at it. I wanted to share with you background on why Dr. Kevin Conrad visited the White House to protect patient privacy for the thousands of patients of the White House medical unit and the physicians who treated him. Normally, we do not disclose the names of the specialists we work with. Side note, there is a place where you have to sign in when you come to the White House, and all of that is public information that you can look up online. So their claim of privacy is just completely nonsense. Continuing, however, in the interest of accuracy, I have obtained permission from the president and Dr. Conrad to confirm the details I am sharing. Dr. Conrad has been the neurology consultant to the White House medical unit since 2012. He was chosen for his breadth of experience and expertise across the specialty of neurology. Prior to his movement disorder fellowship at Emory University, he had practiced as a general neurologist for 6 years. He is the longest serving neurologist at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center and in the military health system. He has been a member of the facility and the Uniformed Services University Medical School since 1991 and is core faculty of the neurology residency program. Quick side note, he is also a donor and loyalist to the Democratic Party, just FYI. He has numerous local and national teaching awards and is highly regarded for his clinical skills. His qualities make him a valued and versatile consultant to assess and treat a wide variety of conditions. Prior to the pandemic and following its end, he held regular neurology clinics at the White House Medical Clinic in support of the thousands of active duty members assigned in support of the White House operations. Many military personnel experience neurological issues related to their service, and Dr. Kennard regularly visits the WHMU as part of this general neurology practice. We value the contribution he has made across the many patients he has treated in support of the White House and its personnel over these years. As I have written in each of the president's medical reports, as part of the president's annual physical, he sees a team of specialists that have included optometry, dentistry, orthopedics, foot and ankle, orthopedics, which for the spine, physical therapy, neurology, sleep medicine, cardiology, radiology, and dermatology. Dr. Kennard was one of the neurological specialists that examined President Biden for each of his annual physicals. His findings may have been made public. His findings have been made public each time I have released the results of the president's annual physical. President Biden has not seen a neurologist outside his annual physical. Now, remember, as a side note, you have to really pay attention to what she says in these letters. Remember, she's the one yesterday trying to tell us the president never seen a medical doctor, yet he had a phone consultation. So there's definitely some word games going on here. So you just have to be very careful about this as we continue to go through this letter. And of course, we are waiting live for the White House press conference to begin, where the White House press secretary, Jean-Pierre, should be speaking with us. Again, she was supposed to join us 1 hour and 15 minutes ago, but who's counting, right? All right. The results of this year's exam were detailed in my February 20th letter and colon, and she's quoting, an extremely detailed neurological exam was given, reassuring in that there were no findings which would be consistent with a cerebellar, which means brain, or other central neurological disorder, such as a stroke, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, or ascending lateral sclerosis. Nor are there any signs of cervical myopathy, and I believe that means some type of cancer in the brain, but don't quote me on this. Exam did not support a finding of peripheral neuropathy in both feet. This exam did again find a finding of this neuropathy in both feet. So what apparently the president has is like tingling or some type of painful sensation in the periphery, and in his case, it means his feet. So that's pretty straightforward. No motor weakness was detected. He exhibits no tremor, either at rest or with activity. He demonstrates excellent fine motor dexterity, but a subtle difference in heat-cold sensation could be elicited as it was last year. This heat-cold sensation deficit was deducted a couple of inches higher on his ankle calf this year, which is not unsuspected. There may, in fact, be day-to-day subjective variation of these findings, as during last year's exam. This area of sensation deficit was actually found to be smaller than the year before. And it continues and closes out saying, seeing patients at the White House is something Dr. Kennard has been doing for a dozen years. Dr. Kennard was chosen for his responsibility, not because he is a movement disorder specialist, but because he is a highly trained and highly rewarded neurologist here at Walter Reed and across the military health system. And it concludes with a very wide expertise, which makes him flexible to see a variety of patients and problems respectively submitted. physician to the president, this Dr. O'Connor. Okay. Well, you have to remember when you look through something like this, that this White House loves to play word games. So just because the president is saying something, or I should say this particular doctor, oh, I didn't find this, I didn't find that, doesn't mean he doesn't have something else. For example, Parkinson's disease is not the only disease that somebody can have as a result of having conditions like the president has been experiencing. As a matter of fact, I know this for a fact that when it comes to some type of, let's just call it Parkinson's disease or some type of dementia, when you talk about Parkinson's specifically, I believe it's only like 70% will actually have the handshaking or the tremors, where you're shaking your hand, that type of thing that we generally see with Parkinson's patients. In other words, not all individuals suffering with that dreaded disease of Parkinson's will have those type of outward, obvious type of activities going on where you have that shaking and all this other stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind. They love to lie, folks, when it comes to the White House, right? I almost fell out of my chair yesterday, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, that this press secretary was saying that, oh, yeah, well, I said he never had a doctor visit or words to that effect. I didn't say he didn't have a phone consultation with a doctor. So, again, there are many other types of dementia. We talked about them on this program before, not just Parkinson's. You got the Lewy body dementia. You have other types of dementia that have very different names, but essentially they're all forms of some type of dementia. It is remarkable, in my mind, how the press, the president, well, I should say some members of the press, the president and his administration continues to lie to each and every one of us. We see with our own eyes what's going on. It's so obvious. It's very obvious what's going on, but they keep telling us effectively, you cannot believe your lying eyes. And that's the bottom line. Really just odd, really just strange. Let me see what the update is on the White House press secretary. No update. We are still waiting. Okay, so I just want everybody to get a quick update. And Zach, you may need to get the popcorn. She's already an hour and 12 minutes late. How about that, huh? Rosemary, I always appreciate you, sweetheart, joining the conversation. Hope your day is going good for you. Let's see, Sapphire. Connor worked with James Biden at AmeriCorps, and Jill insisted that he be hired, saying, we are all confident that he'll do whatever we say. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Talking about Dr. O'Connor right there. Hello to Rosemary. And then Bear, best report money can buy. Yeah, I would think so. I never trust these type of letters when they're released. Of course, they're never going to have anything earth-shattering in there, and they always, unfortunately, play with these words. They're always, it's kind of like Bill Clinton back in the 90s. It depends on what the meaning of is. Really? All right, Zach, what he doesn't have, not what he does. Okay, thank you, I agree. And hello to Rosemary again. Zach, there was more information about the neurologist credentials and attempt to make it. Yeah, I think that's another obvious trick right there, that when you are trying to bury something, you're trying to hide something, one of the many tactics you can use is try to just overwhelm us with someone's credentials. In other words, this person is someone that you should never question. If they say it, what they're telling you is true. And of course, like you probably, Zach, I'm only more suspicious when I hear that type of nonsense. If that doctor really did write that report, that doctor should be held accountable for. Yeah, I like I said, I would be, if it was reversed and I was in their situation, in their shoes, I would be very concerned of some type of fallback as being part of what's clearly a conspiracy to deny the truth or to hide the truth or to keep the American people from finding out. Again, the Wall Street Journal came out today. They came out today with a article, and remember, they were the ones that were hammered before, prior to the debate debacle. They came out and said, hey, Joe Biden has some serious issues. 45, 50 Democrats came forward and they said this guy's got problems, that he's clearly has some type of deficiencies, and they were basically kind of shunned. They were treated like they were a pariah of some sort. Now you got the Wall Street Journal coming out with another article from inside sources, pretty well saying what we all know to be true, that Joe Biden is clearly in decline. Obviously, there's a lot of panic going on at the White House and in the Democratic Party. And as I just said a minute ago, the Democrats are still meeting behind closed doors, trying to decide what they're going to do with Joe Biden. I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty amazing. All right, just for fun, I want to take a look until this press conference gets going. I want to take a look, and you tell me why you think. Then I'm going to tell you why I think President Biden has been able to kind of pull this off all the way up until now. Now we realize there's a lot of people enabling him, this type of thing. But I think I got a few interesting points that we can make here on this here. Let me see what these questions are here. Let's see. Yeah, I agree totally, Bear. If that doctor really did write that report, that doctor should be held accountable for endangerment. Yeah, okay, we talked about that. That's exactly right. And Zach, withholding diagnosis is just as deceptive as outright lying. Folks, I agree totally. I believe that this particular situation, this cover-up that's going on, is actually going to be bigger than Watergate once it all finally comes out and we see the scope of what's going on. I meant the breadth of this is just going to be staggering. There's a lot of people involved in this conspiracy, and there's a lot of people that are still going to ride this all the way out. So, all right, Sapphire, White House visitor log shows Dr. Kennard and 4 other doctors arrived at the White House 5 p.m. and stayed into midnight. Yeah, again, there's going to be all kinds of stuff that's going to be coming out. KJP, the press secretary, has COVID-19. That's why she is late. Oh, I don't know if you know that or just throwing that out there as funny, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't end up canceling it. I'm sure somebody will come out in her place because they're still on the White House website. Let me just double verify that. Yeah, it's on it's still on the White House website that the press briefing is about to continue. So this is directly from the White House's page. And just as a programming note, President Biden is supposed to be delivering remarks. That's going to be interesting on the 75th anniversary of NATO. Imagine all the members of NATO have come to the United States right now to essentially, basically just shake hands, have a party together, and tell the world that we are united, we're strong, we're not going anywhere, and we're going to stand strong in the face of this Russian aggression. And yet we have a president who's clearly in decline, clearly suffering with some type of disease process. And all this is going on right here in our own country with all this subtext, I guess you can call it, kind of going on. So, all right. Yeah, I thought you were being funny, Bear. Thanks for that, though. A good chuckle is, it's a good chuckle, right? Zach, he is really pulling it off. He isn't really pulling off. Puppets are pulled up by the string. Yeah, he's definitely a puppet. No doubt about that. And Sapphire, they may be waiting for the Democrats, MTG, or meeting to finish. Yeah, they could be. I don't know. Could be not. Who knows? We're going to find out sooner or later. I can't imagine they're going to continue to allow it to go much longer. They still have that NATO meeting going on. They have remarks the president is scheduled to give, and I guess 2.5 hours now. And let me see what the update is here. Let me just double check. They are definitely late. I want to make sure that now they're still at their meeting. There's been no change in the meeting on that. So, all right, let's take a look at this together. This is something I've been pondering about and working on. I want you to see and tell me what you think the difference is here. Okay, so let's go through this together. Here's Exhibit 1. This is going to be President Biden at the State of the Union address 2024. And I got it right here at a position that I want you to listen to and just see the difference on the president, okay? So how did he go from this? Here's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about. And then we're going to take a look at the second. So listen in for just a second here.
That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers in the war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself.
Clearly much more engaged.
That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers in the war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
Okay, so you see how he is during the State of the Union. Remember, this is back in January 2024, and I would say he's much more lucid. He's definitely in charge, I guess you could say. He sounds aggressive. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's making eye contact. Whatever you want to say. He's I mean, it's an okay performance. Just to remind everybody, back during that time frame, there were many people that were having the conversations we're having right now, not as direct, but they were definitely concerned that something was going on. Now, fast forward, this is President Biden, and I got it set at this particular point during the debate that was, of course, on CNN and every channel for that matter. But listen to Joe Biden and listen to the difference and ask yourself, what is the difference? What is going on? When we know he's got a problem, but what is the difference? Here we go.
Of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a four-year period, number one. Number two, he got $2 trillion tax cut, benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look,
y'all notice how President Trump turned his head? He was looking forward most of the time. Now he's actually turned his head and he's looking directly at President Biden. And this is where President Biden just kind of shuts down. Pretty sad the first time I saw it, to be perfectly honest with you. I actually felt bad for the guy. I still do. But we have to talk about it, and we have to do an analysis of what's going on here. And I got a point that I'm leading up to, so let's continue.
If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Their system.
Yeah, that's what you call saved by the bell, by the way, when you see the president actually just lost his complete train of thought and shut down. It's kind of like a prize fighter in a fight, you know, ding, ding, saved by the bell type of thing. That's exactly what you're seeing.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
I think that pretty well illustrates what we need to illustrate right there. I think they're about to start this press conference. Let me double check here. Yeah, I think we're about to go live here. Let me kick over to that, and I'll finish my point before we're done. So don't worry, I got a point that I'm leading up to. Let me go ahead and get this set up so we don't miss a beat. This is a direct feed. And let's make sure we got it on full screen. There we go. All right, we are waiting for this press conference here directly from the White House, in which hopefully the press secretary will show up. She's only about an hour and 34 minutes late. Surprise, surprise. Now, a couple comments I want to make. We all saw that meltdown of President Biden. I was going to show you another clip the day after. Here she goes. We'll get into it here in a second.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Really sorry for the delay. I just got out of the Oval Office with the president, who wanted me to relay a few new messages to you all on Hurricane Beryl. This is important to him, and he knows it's important to the people of Texas, so he wanted to make sure that before I came out here, I had all of this information. So the president spoke with Houston Mayor Whitmire and Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo about the impacts of Hurricane Beryl, and they both asked for help from the federal government. Because of the governor of Texas is currently out of the country, the president then called the lieutenant governor of Texas to ensure that Texans are getting the resources they need and deserve following this devastating storm. On the call, the president raised the need for a major disaster declaration and immediately approved it while on the call when the lieutenant governor requested it. With this major disaster declaration in place, we will be able to provide life-saving and life-sustaining activities. The president and his team have been working around the clock for the past 2 days to ensure Texas has the resources and tools needed to respond to Beryl and keep Americans safe. Officials from the U.S. Coast Guard and FEMA have been on the ground, and senior White House officials have been in constant contact with their counterparts. While the storm has passed, our greatest concern right now is power outages and extreme heat. So we want to encourage residents to remain vigilant as temperatures rise, especially older adults and those with underlying health conditions. Fortunately, 800,000 have had power restored overnight, and we expect another 1 million to have their power restored today. The federal government has also offered generators to help reduce the impact of the power outages. The president continues to take decisive action to help the people of Texas recover, and he looks forward to working with the state to get more critical resources to the people that need them. I also want to share one additional scheduling item with all of you as well at the top. In addition to many NATO meetings we announced yesterday, on Thursday afternoon, President Biden will meet with President Zelensky of Ukraine to discuss our unwavering support for Ukraine as it continues to defend itself from Russian aggression. That meeting will be at 1:30 p.m. at the Convention Center, which, as you all know, is where the NATO sessions are being held, and it will take place just before the NATO-Ukraine Council meeting. This will be the third meeting between both presidents in recent weeks, following their sit-down in France and also a sit-down at the G7 in Italy, and it will further demonstrate the strength of the partnership between our countries. And finally, just a personal note here. I want to say a few words about Sam Michel here, who served as acting deputy press secretary for the good part of this year. We are sad that today is indeed his last day, but we are so grateful for his service. And he has been an incredible colleague. We were lucky to have him on our team, on our press team. His sharpness, his ability to stay calm under pressure, and his strategic thinking has been a real asset to us all. Sam, you will be greatly missed. Thank you so much for being on the team and stepping in when we really needed you. Okay. All right. Sung Ming.
Thank you. I just want to get a clarification on the letter that was sent last night.
Sure, absolutely.
From Dr. O'Connor. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem to explicitly describe the nature of Dr. Kennard's meeting with Dr. O'Connor. So can you say whether that one meeting was related to care for the president himself?
I can say that it was not.
It was okay, great. And can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no, actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were laid out in the letter was actually repeated right here behind this lectern at this podium yesterday. It was what
said that.
Hold on. I said many of the things, and we got clarification, obviously, from Dr. O'Connor, but it was in line with what I said. When I said only 3, right? I said only 3 visits that this particular doctor had. I said a neurologist. What I was not able to confirm is the name, and the reason why is because we do not share private information. That is something that we respect, and we wanted to make sure that we protected our consultants here that work with the White House Medical Unit, their security as well. And so that is the one thing that I was not able to confirm. Obviously, Dr. O'Connor's letter confirms that, but we had to get permission from Dr. Kennard and also the president in order to put that information. And it is not normal. And that also states that in Dr. O'Connor. But many of the things that I said right here at this podium is in the letter.
And can I just also ask a little, this is the second time in less than a week where the briefing had prompted a need for later clarification on questions about the president's health. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to.
So I disagree. Sung Ming. It's not. Yesterday, a lot of the things that I said right here in this briefing room, I know you were not in the briefing room. It's in the letter. It was in the letter. It was being incorrectly assumed and insinuated that the president had seen Dr. Kennard more than 3 times. I said that it was only 3 times that the president had seen a neurologist. I didn't confirm the name, but I did say it was only 3 times. It was being incorrectly assumed and insinuated that the president was being treated for Parkinson's. I said right here that the president was not being treated for Parkinson's. I actually went a step further and said he wasn't taking medication for Parkinson's. I said that right here. It was also being assumed and insinuated that Dr. Kennard was someone who only worked on Parkinson's when in fact he's a general neurologist. That was something that Dr. O'Connor was actually able to confirm, that he was a general neurologist, not in fact a general neurologist. And we also wanted to set the record straight. And so, it is important. We believe it was important to all of you. I actually even said here at the podium, if there was more information that we could provide, we would do that. And we did. But many of the things that I said right here is in the letter. Does the
president feel like he's beat back this effort to force him to step aside?
Look, you heard the president yesterday when he called into Morning Joe, did about 18 minutes of Q&A yesterday morning. He spoke very, very, I think, forcefully, passionately about where he stands, about how he sees things moving forward. And we also have said many times, we respect members of Congress. We respect their view. But I also want to say there's a long list of congressional members who have been very clear and in support of this president, whether it's the CBC, who gave a full support, the Congressional Black Caucus, for folks who are watching and are not sure what CBC is. They were very much supportive. They said, we think that this is Representative Joyce Beatty, to be clear. We think that the call went extremely well. The president was very responsive. Representative Troy Carter, who's also a member of the CBC, he was elated to hear directly from the president and that he is all in, and we are all in with him. You got a Congressional Hispanic Caucus. They put out a statement in full support of this president, and there are others. And so, look, he is going to focus on continuing to work on behalf of the American people, continuing to build on an unprecedented record that he's been able to get done with many of these congressional members that he's proud to have worked with. But that's his focus right now. That's his focus.
He's still talking to more people, more.
He's going to
members of
continue
Congress.
to engage, as you saw him in Pennsylvania when he was when he was in the Commonwealth on the road. He had two of the senators, two of the congressional members with him, the House members with him. He's going to be traveling later in the week. He's going to be engaging. I mentioned yesterday his robust schedule for the next 2 weeks. When he's in state, he certainly will continue to engage. I don't have a list of additional calls to read out, but he did CBC last night, Congressional Black Caucus, and he's going to continue to engage as he has been. Go ahead, Mary.
To follow on that, the president has made clear he's done talking about the debate. It is time to move on.
Yeah.
But some of his allies have made clear they're very much still in this wait and see mode. I mean, Senator Patty Murray saying he must do more to demonstrate he can campaign strong enough to beat Trump. Senator Durbin saying he's concerned whether this is just a one-off or a larger issue. So I guess, how worried is the president that despite his best efforts, he's not going to be able to close the book on these concerns?
And Mary, I appreciate the question, but as you know, there are hundreds of members in Congress, hundreds. And I laid out a list of folks who have supported him. We've heard from Senator Coons, we heard from Senator Fetterman. There's support there as well for him. And so we just want to make sure that we put that out there as well.
Almost a party united behind him,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And look, Representative Gregory Meeks said, coming out of the congressional Democrats meeting, said that they're united. And you just saw the Dem Caucus leadership take questions from some of your colleagues over at the Capitol. So that is important as well to note. But look, he had a bad night. We've talked about it. He understands people's concerns. We have been out there, as we have been in previous months, but out there obviously in the past 10 days, more than 10 days now, since the debate. And you see from his engagement with everyday people on the ground, you see him with congressional members who are showing their support, speaking on behalf of this president while we're on the ground in that respective state or Commonwealth, being where we were in Pennsylvania on Sunday. And so we're just going to continue that. But look, what I can say is, look, we respect people's opinion. You just mentioned two senators that we were very proud working with over the past 3.5 years to get historic legislation done. And that's what we want to focus on. You're right. We do want to turn the page. You heard me say this last week. We want to get to the other side of this. We want to continue doing the work. And that's what the president's going to do.
And just to be clear, does he have plans to talk with leadership again soon?
I don't have any calls. We don't have calls to read out or to preview. He is going to continue to engage. I just don't have anything right now to share at this moment. He talked to CBC, again, the Congressional Black Caucus members yesterday. They had a very, very good call. And so he's going to continue to engage. Okay.
Thanks, Karine. The White House has obviously fielded a lot of questions in recent days about the president's health, whether the White House has been forthcoming or not about that issue. And I just wondered, have the last 12 days made you reconsider any specific statements that you might have made in recent months on that issue?
I appreciate the question. I really do, and the opportunity. I think there has been moments here when I have said, and especially in the gaggle, I think, and actually yesterday, if I have, said misled in something that I've said or haven't had the full information, I actually own up to that. And I actually say, I will do my best to get you the information. Hence the letter for Dr. O'Connor, right? And so I will, I've always said, I've always been committed to doing the best I can to give you the information that we have. That is a commitment from the team. It has been an unprecedented time. I think you guys could admit that, right? It is an unprecedented time. And so we are meeting the moment, a new moment that has never really existed before. And so we want to make sure that we get you all the information that we have. And when we don't have it, we do try our best to provide that information. And so that is something that I'm going to continue to do. And I've always said it is an honor and a privilege to be standing in front of you every day, exercising in the freedom of the press. This is a briefing that is watched around the world because we lead in democracy, right? We lead in the freedom of the press and what that looks like. Honor and privilege, and I will continue to do my best to do just that.
And we certainly understand, you speak on behalf of the president and you defend him, his actions, his positions, his policy positions included. Could I just ask you about one example, just going back, that comes to mind? September.
In the past, you're talking about the last 12 days?
I'm talking about
recent
months.
No, well, you just said recently. It's been, we've been going back and forth. And so in the last 12 days or so. That's how I believe that's how you asked me the question.
I was talking generally.
Okay.
But if I could just ask you about one example.
I mean, look, if you're going to ask me about something from months ago, it probably would be fair for me to. I probably won't be able to answer that right away. Whatever it is that you're going to say to me.
Come back to us.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. But it's also to say, hey, from September of whenever year, right? That is something that I probably should give a little space to kind of see exactly what you're speaking of.
Okay, and that's fine if that ends up.
I just want to make sure that
response.
we
Sure.
kind of give some context here.
Yeah. And you'll remember this. This was an event where the president called out Congresswoman Jackie Walorski, looked for her in the room, even though she had recently died. You told multiple reporters at the time, and this was asked in multiple different ways.
She was top of mind.
Right.
Yeah.
It was because she was top of mind for the president. I mean, would you, on that example, would you offer a different explanation?
I would not, because honestly, I spoke to the president right before coming out that day, and that is what the president told me. It's not something that came from me. That is something that came from the president.
So he was saying, even as he was
She-
looking for her in the moment, it wasn't in his
She was
speech.
top. She was top of mind.
Okay.
That is coming, as you just said in your question. I speak for the president. I speak on behalf of him. That was coming from him, and I was delivering directly from the president what he was thinking at the time.
Great. A very different kind of example, and this is more recent.
Sure.
When the president was in Italy for the G7, and you remember he skipped one of the leaders' dinner, which was a major event for the summit. And I remember you were asked about it by reporters, and you said, we shouldn't read too much into the fact that he's skipping one dinner. I mean, would the explanation actually have been that he was tired and that he needed to skip something that was happening so late in the evening?
My answer stays the same. I wouldn't read too much into it. It's not the first time that he has. He has a really busy schedule, and there's a lot going on. As you know, when the president is abroad, he has continued to do domestic stuff as well as meeting with global leaders. And so I truly would not read too much into it, and I will leave it there.
Okay, I have a very final question on the annual
Sure.
letter from Dr. O'Connor. He said that the president continues to be fit for duty and fully executes all of his responsibilities without any exemptions or accommodations. Just because it's been a couple of months, do you know if that statement is still accurate?
It's still accurate.
So no exemptions, no accommodations?
No exemptions, no accommodations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karine, there was an announcement from the Department of Justice today about a crackdown effort to interrupt a Russian state-sponsored bot operation, AI-fueled operation, to denigrate politicians in the United States and elsewhere. Do you have any concerns right now that this is the leading edge of any part of a Russian effort to interfere in the election? Has the president been briefed on this? And have you seen any evidence that the Russians or other foreign powers have tried to seize on the debate performance to repeat some of the president's most embarrassing moments?
So that's a very good question. I would have to talk to our team about those particular questions that you just asked. There were multiple questions in your statement there. I would leave it to the Department of Justice as what they announced. Obviously, that's for them to speak to. Look, AI has always been a concern. That's why the president made some announcements recently, an executive to take executive action on how we can deal with AI. We want to see more action, more fulsome action legislatively from Congress. And that is something. It is a cutting edge technology that we need to get our hands on and get a better better understanding of what it could potentially do. And so that is something that the president certainly is looking to make sure that we deal with this in a full whole of government way. On those particular questions, I would have to check in with our team here, and obviously whatever's related to the Department of Justice in that statement, I would refer you to them.
Yeah, that's great. You said just a minute ago that the president wants to turn the page on the last couple of weeks and get to the other side of this, where the White House wants to. Has President Biden seen enough support over the last 36 hours from fellow Democrats in Congress to now start turning the page and look ahead? I mean, what's his reaction been to what he's seen since Congress has gotten back?
I mean, it's very similar to how I answered the question to one of your colleagues. He's very much focused on what's ahead, right? He's very much focused. He has a fulsome, robust schedule in the next 2 weeks that we laid out for all of you. He wants to focus on that, the messages that he wants to come out when he goes to Texas next week, when he goes to Vegas next week. He's going to be on the road on Friday as well. I also want to say, look, he is proud of the Congressional Black Caucus, who said they have he has their support. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus did the same, and other members of Congress, obviously. And so, look, he wants to move forward. As your colleague said, definitely unite the party, continuing to unite the party. We heard from Representative Meeks, who said the Democrats, the Congressional Democrats, came out of the meeting today united. I think that's important to note. But the president's going to move forward. He's going to move forward, and he's going to continue to go out there, engage with the American public, like you saw him do in Pennsylvania, and he's going to stay focused on that.
What do you feel? Does he feel like he's weathered this storm, so to speak?
Look, I think that he is more determined than ever to continue to get the job done, to continue to build an economy that works for all, to continue to make sure that we have a middle class, right, that is strong, right, that we don't have a trickle down economy, that economy that's built from the bottom up, middle out. That's what he wants to continue to do. I think this week with the NATO summit, the 75th year of NATO, let's not forget, NATO has helped to protect Americans and also protect the world and what it's been able to do for the past 75 years. You're going to see the president engaging with 32 leaders of this alliance. I think that's really important. That's, again, on behalf of the American people. So he wants to do that. He has a lot on his mind, and as it deals with making sure we deliver for the American people, that's what he's going to focus on. Okay, Peter, I know we had our chat yesterday.
Yes, thank you,
So
Karine.
go ahead.
Does President Biden commit to serving a full second term if reelected?
Yes.
Thank you. We know the president says that his health is fine, but it's just his brain, and that he's sharpest before.
He was joking, by the way. I just want to make sure that that's out there. And he was making a lighthearted joke as he was speaking off. He's speaking off the cuff and was making a joke. You know the president, he likes to joke a lot. He's the same guy who says, "I know I look 40," right? So he likes to make jokes. It is a joke. I think people laugh when he says it.
Well, he
So
also
it is a
said
joke.
he's sharpest before 8 p.m. So say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. He has someone that is decided, obviously, with his National Security Council on who gets to tell him that news.
So Kevin McCarthy just said that when he was the speaker, many times when we had meetings in the Oval Office, Jill was there as well. When the First Lady's in these meetings, is she making decisions or is she just advising the president?
No, the president is the president of the United States. He makes decisions.
Okay. Another family member, President Biden has told me before, he and his son don't have any business dealings together. So what is Hunter Biden doing in White House meetings?
Are you talking about the meeting where they came together from Camp David and the two of them walked to the president's meeting and he was there?
There's a report that aides were struck by his presence during their discussions.
Look, I can't, I'm certainly not going to get into private conversations that occur. What I can say is, and I spoke to this before, is that when they came back from Camp David, the president spent a couple of days at Camp David with his family. He is very close to his family, as you know. It was the week of 4th of July, which is why his family members were here last week. They walked together into the meeting.
Can you say if Hunter Biden has access to classified information?
No.
And are you guys just not, since February, testing President Biden for Parkinson's or for dementia? Because if he gets a bad result, it's all over that day.
Again, as I've said many times before, the president has had a fulsome, comprehensive, what we shared with you was comprehensive, but he's had a full physical. We've shown the results of those physicals this past 3 years. We showed it just 4 months ago. And it is in line with what we have done, similar to President Obama, similar to George W. Bush. We are committed to continue to be transparent. We are committed to continue to show the results of those physicals. And look, it's the president's medical team that makes the decision. We are not, with all due respect, you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. It is the president's medical unit that makes a decision on what the president needs.
Not a doctor, just
No.
play one on TV. But I know
That's
that
scary.
that is scary. But I know that, especially as adults get into their 80s, health conditions can pop up more than just once a year when he's getting his physical. I think if my wife saw me on TV misspeaking or saying the wrong thing or seeing a change in my appearance, she would probably say, let's go to a doctor just to make sure that you are okay, you have a family, you have an important job. Why doesn't anybody in the president's family urge him just to go to get checked out to say the coast is clear?
Okay, so just to step back just a little bit, because I think you weren't in the briefing room last week. I don't want to go backwards, but just to share a little bit about that night. The president said it was a bad night. He talked about it. He had a cold, right? He talked about his schedule, right? Being abroad. And so we spoke about what that night was like for him. And we understand what the American people saw, what you all saw. We've spoken to that. And I also would say, and I think you know this, Peter, you've covered a couple of administrations at this point, that the president, every president, has a White House medical unit that is with him 24/7, that is available to him 24/7. That is unlike any other American, right? That is not the norm. That is uncommon. Just down on the other side of the colonnade is where the medical unit is. And I did share that the president checks in while he's exercising with his doctor a couple times a week. And so he has that. He has something that majority of Americans, all Americans, I would probably argue, don't have, which is a full medical unit that is with him at all times. And he gets a full physical, annual physical that we share with all of you. And that is very different than an everyday American who sometimes they're lucky if they can go get a physical. They have to get into a car. They have to take public transportation. The president has, again, a medical unit that's with him here at the White House and travels with him.
So I guess the question is just, you're saying this is not a situation where you would rather just not know if there is an
What I
issue
will
with the
tell you
president,
is-
because if he
No.
does get a bad result, it is all over. He has
First
to
of all-
leave office
first of
right
all-
away. He can't run for re-election.
First of all, it's a hypothetical, right? That you're giving me a hypothetical. But I will also say, just to clear this up, the White House medical unit, his doctor, they don't believe that he needs anything more than what we have been able to provide. A full, detailed, very comprehensive physical that he had 4 months ago. It is their decision to make. It's not yours. It's not mine. It's the White House medical unit. Okay.
Hi, Karine. You mentioned that the Democratic Party was united, perhaps the leadership, but a lot of rank and file Democrats have a lot of concerns. One of them, Steve Cohen, said today, not only are they not on the same page, but they're not even in the same book. How does the White House, is the White House concerned about that?
Look, I've said before, right? We respect congressional members. They have their opinions. We respect their opinions. Many of them that we had to opportunities to deliver really good results on behalf of the American people. But there is the whole Congressional Black Caucus. They support the president. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus support the president. Those are pretty impressive numbers. Senator Coons, Senator Fetterman support the president. There's also another list here that shows support for this president. You're going to have some congressional members who feel differently. That is up to them, right? The president wants to continue. He's going to have those conversations. He's going to engage with congressional members. He's going to continue to do that as he has. That's not going to stop. Obviously, the campaign is doing their work. We're continuing our engagement with congressional members as we do pretty much all the time on whatever issue we want to work with them on. So that's not going to change. You heard from AOC, the Congresswoman from New York. She said the matter is closed and I support him. Right? You heard from Maxwell Frost, who was on CNN today, was very supportive on CNN. So you do have others out there just today or yesterday, giving support to the president. I can't, you're mentioning one person, but there are others as well.
Yeah. Oh, separate topics. Sure. Senator Richmond this morning, he said that the debate stage was words, the debate stage was performance. I would say look at actions and accomplishments. President's allies have made some version of that argument to not pay attention to what he said on stage, but what his accomplishments are. But when you're the president of the United States, don't words matter?
So when you're the president of the United States, I think any leader, right, especially including a former president, your words do matter. You're 100% correct. The president has owned up to that night. He said it was a bad night. He said this many times. He's even said he screwed up. So those are the president's words. That's all I can give you at this time. We do believe that we should not just look at the 90 minutes. The president has done more than any other modern day presidents, administrations. Historic things have gotten done. When I was watching the Democratic caucus, they talked about $35 insulin, right? Capping that. When you think about seniors who are paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars, we were able to get that done because of a very important piece of legislation that we moved through, right? And only Democrats made that happen. That's also because of the leadership of this president. And that's just one. That's a bipartisan infrastructure legislation. There's the CHIPS and Science Act. There's the PACT Act for our veterans. I mean, there are things that he's been able to do that elected officials, presidents before him have been trying to do and could not get done, beating Big Pharma. So there is a long list of impressive things that this president has been able to get done, getting us out of the pandemic, that we do believe is important to note here as well as an accomplishment of this presidency.
Another question that I don't think has been asked, correct me if it has. Yeah. The White House and also the campaign has said that he had a cold that night. He then went to a watch party afterwards, which you have brought up. I was at that watch party. If he did have a cold, why then push him to another event where he spent some 45 minutes along the rope line?
I mean, and not just and I would add to that, it wasn't just a watch party. We landed at 2 a.m. in the morning in North Carolina. He greeted hundreds of North Carolinians in North Carolina. He woke up the next day in North Carolina, gave a speech in front of thousands of North Carolinians. No. I'm just trying to you gave me an opportunity, and I'm just using that opportunity, obviously, to lay out what the president did in those 2.5 days. Look, one of the reasons that we shared that he had a cold is because during the debate in real time, everybody heard his hoarse voice, and folks asked, and we were able to confirm right away that he had a cold, and that he was also tested negative for COVID. So we were able to share that in real time. So just also want to share that. Look, he pushed forward, right? Many of us have colds. and we still push forward. He's the president of the United States. He understands how important it is to continue to get up every morning, regardless of how you feel, right, to get things done. That's how this president is. I'm sure that's how many presidents before him were as well, when it comes to really not letting a cold get you down. And I think that's also why he pushed forward in the debate also on that night. So look, he pushed forward, tried to get things done, wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity. People who watched him do a debate, who were waiting for him, people at 2:00 in the morning in North Carolina who were waiting for him. He wanted to make sure that he engaged with Americans.
And finally, Karine, this morning House Speaker Mike Johnson said, as he has before, that Democrats have been covering up the president's mental acuity for years. How do you respond to that? And has the White House misled Americans?
So I will say this, Americans out there, folks who are watching, who are not normally in the day-to-day of what's happening in this world, there is a comprehensive full comprehensive medical report on the website, whitehouse.gov. I would encourage them to take a look, read that report, and they can also read for themselves what his specialist, a group of specialists coming out of the medical unit decided on, what they examined, what they saw, what they reported on. I think that matters as well. It is a group of them that come together when it comes to doing their physical. It is extensive physical. And so there is something there for them. It's transparent. It's out there. It's for them to read. It's for the American, not just for you, for the American people to take a look. And I think that's important to note as well. And that's what I would share with them. Okay, and I'll come to you, Ed, in a second. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. The president said yesterday in his letter, in his interview, that he talked to a wide range of voters. He overwhelmingly heard from people that they wanted him to stay in the race. Our polling shows that 76% of Democrats think he is too old to run this year. How is he coming to this conclusion? Are you sure that a handful of events is giving him a representative view of swing state voters?
So look, that has been, you all have asked me about polling and his age for, I feel like a year now. It's come up many, many times. And, I'm not going to speak to polls. It's not something I'm going to do from here. I'm just going to let the experts, the pundits, and all of you. No, wait. I was about to answer a question. Just give me a second. Look, for the past 3.5 years, the president has been out there talking to voters. And if you think about, what he was referring to when he went to Atlanta right after the watch party, he literally did a rope line. Some of your colleagues were there. Some of your colleagues spoke to some of the folks who were there and heard from them directly. He heard from folks at the rope line. I mean, these are everyday, engaging with everyday people. That's what he did. Landed at 2 a.m. in the morning in North Carolina, hundreds of people there. He did a rope line, engaged with everyday people. The next day, thousands of people were at the North Carolina event, and you heard chants, "Let's go, Joe. We love you, Joe." I mean, that's something that you feel, right? That's something that you feel out there, and that's what he feels out there. The next day, he went to New York, and he was able to speak to some supporters there, and then went to New Jersey. So it is a continuation. On Sunday, 600 people at the church. If you watch that service, you heard from that congregation. If you watched him in Harrisburg, you saw him engaging with people. I mean, there's nothing that takes away, all respect to the polling out there, but nothing takes away, I don't think, from engaging with everyday Americans. I think that matters too. And I'm just laying out the last 10 or 12 days, right? That's just the last 10 or 12 days.
One more. Over the weekend, the New York Times reported on a senior White House official who apparently had worked with the president in his vice presidency in the 2020 campaign, said he shouldn't seek re-election. They thought he was not up to it, was showing signs of his age. Does the White House know who this person is or making the effort to find out? And are you comfortable having someone who apparently is traveling with him and working with him this way who thinks this?
I mean, look, that is the first time I've ever heard that was in that reporting. This is not the last administration where we try to find who is speaking or leaking. That's not something that we do here. Everybody has their opinion, but that is the first time I've ever heard anything like that. I've never heard anyone speak in that way from here. Get it.
To follow up on something you were saying, Gabe, about congressional outreach, has the president spoken to, does he plan to speak with any of those that have publicly called for him to go?
Look, I don't have a list of people that the president's going to call. He's going to engage with congressional members. That's something that he's going to do. I can say, I'm sure folks here in his Office of Legislative Affairs has had regular communication with everyone. I just don't have a list of who he's going to speak to. But the president is always willing to speak to people who agree with him and don't agree with him. You know that about him. If you've covered him, he's very much that type of president. I just don't want to get ahead of his decision on who he's going to call and how that's going to look.
I don't think we've gotten public clarification about yet. In the interview Friday night, he was asked, "Did you watch the debate?" And he said, "I don't think I did. No." Did he watch the full debate, or what of it has he watched?
That's a good question. I never followed up with him, and I meant to. I have not asked him that question. I was there in the room when he was being asked that question. I just never followed up. That is something that, we could follow up with him on. I have not.
Okay.
I'm sure he's seen clips. I just haven't asked him that full question.
One other thing that's come up.
It's getting round the clock coverage, right? From all of you.
One other thing that's come up in the last little bit, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, I don't know if you've seen this, issued a statement a little while ago saying in part, in recent weeks, Iranian government actors have sought to opportunistically take advantage of ongoing protests regarding the war in Gaza, the playbook we've seen other actors use over the years. We've observed actors tied to Iran's government posing as activists online, seeking to encourage protests and even providing financial support to protesters. She goes on later to urge Americans to remain vigilant as they engage online with accounts and actors they don't personally know. But that's a pretty big charge to make, that Iran may be trying to influence these protests in the streets of the United States.
So yes, I know what you're speaking of, what the DNI warned about. Obviously, for any specifics, I would have to refer you back to Director Haynes and her statement. But broadly speaking here, just bear with me for a second. Iran is seeking to opportunistically take advantage of protest. So I want to echo the DNI's remarks today. Americans across the political spectrum acting in good faith have sought to express their own independent views on the conflict in Gaza. The freedom to express diverse views when done peacefully is essential to our democracy. At the same time, the U.S. government has a duty to warn Americans about foreign malign influences activities. This is important to help Americans guard against efforts by foreign powers to take advantage of or co-opt their legitimate protest activities. We will continue to provide these warnings as they arise. And today, I just want to convey and a firm message from here to Iran and any other foreign actor that seeks to conduct these types of influence activities, meddling in our politics and seeking to stoke division is unacceptable. And we will continue to expose attempts to undermine our democracy and our society just as we are today. That is something that we will continue to do. The U.S. government will continue to vigorously support and defend Americans in their exercise of their First Amendment rights to protest and express political views peacefully. At the same time, we will continue to warn against expose foreign efforts to meddle in our internal affairs and attempt to amplify conflict. The former is an essential part of the robust functioning democracy. The latter is a threat, and it will not be tolerated.
And the president's been read into all this.
He's been briefed.
No problem with it being shared publicly.
He's been briefed. He's been read in. He is aware. And we believe, as I just stated here, it is our duty. It is our duty here as the U.S. government to share that. Okay.
I have a question about the NATO summit.
Sure.
There has been a lot of discussion about Ukraine, but also the southern flank of NATO, countries like Italy and Spain. They want the summit to approve a new strategy to improve relations with countries in North Africa, the Middle East, and work together in challenges like migration or instability. So does the U.S. support this, and is the president trying to or planning to meet with any leaders of the southern flank?
So look, I think we announced some of the bilateral. We announced the one with the UK Prime Minister. I just announced with President Zelensky. We will do our best. The president is hosting the 75th NATO summit. So he's going to be pretty busy engaging with global leaders and obviously hosting the event. So if we have anything more to share, I know my colleagues at the National Security Council will do our best to share that with you. We're going to have some deliverables. We're going to have some statements to make, declarations. I'm not going to get ahead of any of that. So I'm just going to let this summit begin and let the president actually lead these in the next couple of days.
Does the president support this strategy?
What I'm saying to you, I'm not going to get ahead of the summit. We're going to have many conversations, many meetings here. I just want to be super mindful. You also asked me about any other bilateral engagements. We've already announced 2, and so just don't want to get ahead of anything else. Things happen. When the president is there, he gets pulled to the side. We do pull asides. We try to share them in real time as quickly as possible. I just don't have anything to share outside of that.
Sticking with NATO, are there any details you can share on President Biden's meeting with President Zelensky? Just any details on potentially what they might discuss? If Biden had said he would announce new air defense for Ukraine, will that come up at all?
We will definitely, there will be more air defense that we will be announcing. Don't want to get ahead of the president. Look, you saw, as I announced at the top, you saw the president do a bilat with President Zelensky in France and also at the G7. It is always obviously part of those conversations is to continue to show our unwavering support for Ukraine. The president has led in this effort globally, right? If you think about NATO and how the strength of NATO and how it has grown +2. And how we have been able to have a stronger alliance than we've ever had before. That's because of this president. And backing, obviously, behind Ukraine, that's because of this president. So our support continues to be unwavering, and we will have more to read out from that byline.
And as it's the 75th anniversary, Biden's here in DC, obviously, but what does the success look like for Biden, given everything that is going on in kind of the debate aftermath? Kind of what is he measuring?
So I'll say this, and I've said this many times before as it relates to foreign leaders. And look, I'll say that the foreign leaders have had an opportunity to see what the president has been able to do in the last 3.5 years. They've seen that certainly up close and personal the last 3 years. And they know that they are dealing with a president who has been effective and has been able to get things done. I just talked about NATO and the president's leadership and how we've been able to strengthen NATO, make sure that we invigorated the NATO alliance. And that we've been able to see in the last 3.5 years. So the president wants to continue to strengthen that partnership and strengthen those alliances. Obviously, it's not going to just be NATO allies here. We're going to see others. For example, Japan will be here on Thursdays, and other heads of states. I believe there's going to be 38 heads of states that will be here, and so we want to continue to strengthen those relationships, and that's what the president wants to see. It is an important year, the 75th anniversary, and I think all of the work that the president has been able to do will be on full display.
One last question. If the president's health were to decline rapidly next week, just kind of out of the blue, have you had any conversations with him, or has he made any comments on if
Absolutely
he would
not.
step aside?
That's a hypothetical. No. Okay.
Karine, stay on the NATO summit. While the summit, of course, is being held in Washington, China is criticizing NATO as the relic of Cold War. It's causing high security risk to the world and the region. What is the White House response to this?
So look, Russia's aggression against Ukraine poses a threat to transatlantic security. That's what it does. And it shows how critical the NATO alliance is and how important it is to continue to make sure that it is strong. And that's what the president has been able to do. I am not surprised. We are not surprised that China doesn't understand that though considering how they are actively enabling, right? They are themselves enabling Russia's war in Ukraine. So it doesn't surprise me or surprise us that statement was made. But look, NATO is an important alliance. It's been around for 75 years, protecting U.S. American citizens, but also the world. And so we are going to continue to strengthen that alliance.
Second question. Indian Prime Minister Modi is visiting Russia. We all seen the footage that he's hugging, being friendly with Putin, also seeking deepen bilateral relationship. we see that saw that Ukrainian President Zelensky already expressed his disappointment. Is the United States concerning that India, as a U.S. ally, might be actually adding Russia, either unintentionally or intentionally?
I believe my NSC colleagues have spoken to this. I'll just add that and just reiterate that India is a strategic partner with whom we engage in full and frank dialogue, including their relationship with Russia. And we've talked about this before. So we think it's critical that all countries, including India, support efforts to realize an enduring and just peace when it comes to Ukraine. It is important for all our allies to realize this. And so we also believe India's longstanding relationship with Russia gives it the ability to urge the President Putin, to end his brutal war, an unprovoked war in Ukraine. It is for President Putin to end. President Putin started the war, and President Putin can end the war. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. A couple questions on unrelated subjects. First, there's been some reporting by my colleagues in the British press that His Majesty King Charles would like to visit his grandchildren in California and could do so in conjunction with a state visit. Has there been any discussion, or will there be any discussion between President Biden and Prime Minister Starmer about such a visit?
So I don't have anything to share. That is something, obviously, that the State Department and NSC would certainly engage on if that were to be the case. As you know, the new Prime Minister will be here for the NATO alliance. I just mentioned that there will be a bilat between President Biden and the new Prime Minister. So the President looks forward to that. An upcoming visit that involves the King Charles. I don't have anything to share at this time.
Okay, next question. The President yesterday on Morning Joe said he wanted to make sure that the average voter out there still wants Joe Biden to be running for president. And you've rattled off a long list of campaign engagements that he's had over the last 10 or so days since the debate. Those engagements, whenever the president travels, whether it's part of the campaign or official travel, there are advance teams. People who get near him are screened either by the Secret Service or the campaign or both. So how are these groups of people he's meeting with supporters of his? They are supporters. They get to these official events, these official campaign events. They are known to be supporters of the campaign. They self-select by coming to his events. How are groups of people that come to his events, make the time out of their day to do that, and are vetted by the campaign and allowed into these events, representative of the average voter? And then one.
So look, I'm going to be really careful because you're asking me a political question. You would have to talk to the campaign on how the process works, right? No, wait. Give me a second. On how that process works, on who's at these campaign events. So I just want to make that clear because I have to say that from here and make that clear. I would remind you that 14 million people, this is something that I can talk about, voted for the president in the primary. That's 87% of the vote. That matters. Those numbers matter. So that is kind of a reality, a data point that matters as well. And so I'll just leave it there. But I think it does matter. I hear the question that you're asking. He's still engaging with everyday people. He's still hearing directly from them. They're still sharing information, sharing how they feel, sharing how they see the future of his presidency. And I think that matters as well. As far as who's in the room, how that comes together, who's in front of him, you would have to speak to the campaign about that.
Last thing, you've described his engagements with Dr. O'Connor on a regular basis as check-ins. That's what you've described him having after the debate, a check-in versus an exam. Can you elaborate on what the difference is between a check-in and an exam? At these check-ins, does Dr. O'Connor or another staff member take the president's vitals or anything like that?
So I've talked about this on Friday. They're verbal check-ins with the president. They check in. as the president's exercising, that's usually how this happens. And they're not a medical exam. I said this already. I've cleared that up. It's not a physical. It is a verbal check-in that the president does multiple times with his doctor. It's normally as he's working out.
Does anyone from the medical unit take the president's vitals on a regular basis?
What I can tell you, he gets regular check-ins. He does regular check-ins a couple times a week with Dr. O'Connor, and that is for his doctor to decide on. That is not something that I can speak to from here. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. The president's come out very aggressively in the past 24 hours, from that letter to Democrats, the call into MSNBC, the phone call with donors, the CPC last night. Was that his decision personally to step up that outreach?
It has been. He's ready. He's on fire. He's ready to go, and he wants to get out there and continue to show that he has more work to do. Right? He has more important issues for the American people to get done, and so he wants to get out there. He's always has, though. I mean, the last 2.5 years, 3 years, 3.5 years, he looks forward to getting out there, speaking directly to the American people. And I know we say this, and I know sometimes you guys don't believe us, but he does want to engage with you all. He does want to talk more to the press. And so now we're certainly going to continue to create opportunities to do that. He's done interviews 47 times in this year alone, and we're going to continue to create opportunities to do this. We're going to get out there so he can engage with the American people more directly. So we're going to continue to do that.
But in terms of, especially in the last 24 hours, that type of outreach to ease concerns among Democrats about his campaign continuing, was there something specific that he heard or read that prompted this, would seem more like a flurry over the last 24 hours that didn't happen last week? We really saw him doing more.
I get it. No, I get the question. Look, I wouldn't say there's anything specific. This is something that he wanted to do. And if you think about it, he's been on the road a lot since the debate. He was on the road on Friday. He was on the road on Sunday, and then right out of the debate, right, he did about 2.5 days of going into about 4 states. So he's just been on the road, busy engaging with Americans. And he did the ABC interview, as you know, obviously. And so he wants to do more. He wants to do more. There's nothing specific, but he understands. He understands what you all saw, right? He understands he had a bad debate. He understands that what Americans saw. So he wants to go out there and continue to prove to all of you that he can continue to do the work and the
Feel
job.
that outreach is working to ease those concerns after the bad debate?
I mean, look, I think he's, this is kind of the questions that I got from other colleagues. He's hearing directly from the American people, and I think that matters. I think him being out there and Americans seeing him directly, being able to touch him and ask him questions and see him face to face, I think that matters. And so, look, we're going to continue to move forward and do what we have to do. All right, I think I can take one more. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you so much. So we've seen the president being on the ground more, but we've also heard a slightly new tone from him. He said he was frustrated with the elites of his party. He dismissed polls. He criticized media coverage, saying that journalists get election results wrong. So is this the kind of tone we should expect to hear from him going forward? And does he believe this is the kind of tone that the average voters, as he says, expect from him?
Look, I would say this. I think what we've seen the last 10 to 12 days is certainly fundamental to the Joe Biden story. He is someone that is certainly counted out many, many times in his career. People tend to knock him down, and you hear him say he gets back up. This is the story. This is the story of him standing up for himself, standing up for millions of Americans, and certainly millions of Americans who back his leadership and, like him, care. They care about working people. They care about getting things done. And it really truly is who he is at his core, to fight not just for himself, but what he believes in. And he has seen this over and over again. People count him out. People say he's not going to win. People say You know, all of the all of the negative things that they want to put at his feet, and he proves them wrong over and over again. You think about 2020. Folks said the same thing. He's not going to win. He's not going to make it. And he won. In 2022, we had a midterm election. And going into that midterm election, it was supposed to be a red wave. There wasn't a red wave. Happened in 2023. Now we're in 2024. And he's going to continue to fight. That is his commitment. That is quintessential Joe Biden story. That is fundamentally who he is to continuing to fight. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, there you have it, direct from the White House. Interesting press conference. Sorry about the long video today, but you can blame the White House. They decided to start the conference, what was it, about an hour and a half late, something like that? But I guess it is what it is. You can tell that they are definitely in a corner, and the president, and we speculated about this for some time, he's not going anywhere, folks. The president's not going anywhere. He's going to fight to the bitter end. The only way I see him leaving the race is if he decides to leave the race. In other words, he decides to resign. And I think that's only going to happen if and when his wife, his son comes to him and tells him it's time to throw in the towel. And I don't see that happening for all the reasons that we've talked about during this particular little conference we're having today. It's just human nature. They're not going to drop out. They're not going to leave. I mean, it just is what it is. And yeah, I agree with all the comments on here that he's not going to leave. We've been talking about that for some time. For him, you can bank it is Donald Trump, Joe Biden all the way. I don't have any doubt about that. Again, if he was to drop out, then it's going to be Vice President Kamala Harris. There's no way for them to get around Kamala Harris. You have a woman, you have a black woman, and you have a woman, I believe she has Asian in her ancestry. So you're not going to be able to defeat the first woman candidate that's black and, has whatever ethnicity she has mixed in her. It's unfortunate that we still in 2024 deal with these identity politics. It should not be a consideration. But obviously it is, and it is in both parties, which of course is unfortunate. Now, during this little chit chat that we had here today, you definitely see in the White House on defense. They were hammered on everything from the Dems having their own private meeting today, trying to figure out what they're going to do about Joe Biden. She had to take questions concerning Hunter Biden. Imagine that. The president's cocaine addicted son is the gatekeeper to the president of the United States. And of course, along with his wife, who's been on the road hammering and trying to push to stay in office. We did get some information on Iran and a few other things going on with Ukraine, but clearly the president's health is everyone's overwhelming concern, as it should be. I mean, I really am surprised it's not even a bigger issue than what it is already. But I think this is the way it's going to be all the way to election day. And the good news here, House divided against itself cannot stand, and I don't think it's going to stand. I think the president is literally the House divided, cannot stand against itself. I think that's pretty straight up. The president, of course, this press secretary there was just saying the president had a bad night. We've heard that before. She claims still hundreds of senators and representatives are still supporting the president. And she pointed out that apparently 14 million people voted for the president, but many more, of course, have voted for Donald Trump. I don't know the exact numbers on top of my head, but they have. And I want to also, Zach, I really do appreciate your 2 super chats, my friend. Thank you so much for the continued support. You continue to show the channel. I know you have a lot of cats that keep hitting the keyboard, and I love your cats. That's all that I can pretty well say. I also enjoyed seeing Fox News hammer this press secretary. If you remember yesterday, she wouldn't even take a question from Peter Doocy. And I think Peter Doocy did the best he could to try to squeeze the information out of her pertaining to President Biden's health. She clearly has been lying to each and every one of us. I wrote this down. Versus the question she was asked, has the president had any exam? She makes a differentiation between a doctor's exam and a doctor check-in, or I'm sorry, I want to use her exact words, a verbal check-in. And of course, she thinks there's a difference in the two. And that's the reason in her mind, she's not lying like everyone else in the Biden administration is lying to each and every one of us, which is absolutely ridiculous, disgraceful, un-American. It should not be tolerated, but it is. I mean, it really is. No reply. Camilla Harris is Jewish, or yeah. I know she's got some. I didn't know she was Jewish, to be honest with you, but oh well. I mean, that makes it even more difficult in this era of identity politics that we live in. And here's Zach, Louie, Dewey, and Huey. Right on, my friend. Oh yeah, your cats. Okay, so that's your cat's name. All right, no wonder why there's so many super chats. It's cats, folks, always taking over the keyboard. Be sure to pet Louie, Dewey, and Huey for me. I definitely appreciate you and your cats, young man. I really do. Appreciate each and every one of you that tune in, take time. Sorry again, went on for right at 2.5 hours, but I guess it is what it is. I'm glad we were able to stick together and get through this. Now, I know we talked about earlier the two specific things I wanted to point out pertaining to Joe Biden's performances all the way back from January of this year at the State of the Union, all the way through what's going on right now. I got two very interesting points I want to make sure that each and every one of you understand, and it will pretty well explain what's going on with President Biden, at least in my mind. And this is definitely a tease. We're not going to go any deeper into it right now because it's went on too long, right at 2 hours and 30 minutes. But I will have a video coming out very soon. So if you haven't done so already, you're still with me, might as well hit the thumbs up button. We got a lot of viewers over on Twitter. Hey, you want to help the channel? Switch over to YouTube and follow at JR Dukes. There should be a link in the description. I do appreciate all the viewers on YouTube. We've had anywhere from 5 viewers all the way up to 30-some viewers for YouTube. And then my friend on Twitch, I appreciate you joining me today. I think I know who you are, and I appreciate you joining me as always. And obviously, as I just said, everyone on X, thanks for joining. We have a ton on the X platform, which is pretty cool. I don't care how you find me. I'm glad you're here to have a conversation with us each and every time. So anyway, thanks again. I appreciate each and every one of you. I always say, keep that mind free. Never give up. Until next time, my friends, I am JR Dukes.